Welcome to the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Pluff. Each week, we will cover various topics that dads struggle with in their fitness journey. I'll give you actionable steps that you can apply right away, not only to take back control of your own health, but so you're able to be a better example for your kids too. All right, welcome in to this week's episode of the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. Today we have Mike Crossett on the show. Mike is a trainer in the Washington, D.C. area. Mike and I met in February in Dallas at a conference together. We were both two lonely guys hanging out, waiting for the conference to start. Happened to be sitting next to each other, started talking, ended up hanging out all weekend. So it's really cool to have Mike on the show today. I'm going to let him introduce himself, and then we'll get started.
Hey, I am Mike Crossett. I'm an in-person personal trainer, and I actually do a variety of other stuff as well along with that. So I do group classes and semi-private training. And we have a DEXA machine at our gym as well, so we do composition testing as well. But I'm fairly new to the in-person training aspect. I've been going for just a little bit under a year here, but I have an extensive history where I worked with the military for just about 7 years for an organization called Army Wellness Center. They're kind of a holistic wellness program that really focuses on all those holistic aspects of health and wellness. So that included like the physical aspect, the stress management and sleep aspect, as well as the actual physical aspect, nutrition as well. So if I missed any of those, obviously it's the fully encompassing idea there. So my background in education is I did my bachelor degree of exercise science, and I did an applied nutrition degree for my master's degree. I had my certification through the National Strength and Conditioning Association. I had the Strength and Conditioning Association or Strength and Conditioning certification through them. So got a lot of array of things that kind of fold within to my background there. So
awesome. Well, I'm glad you're on the show, Mike. We've stayed connected over the past few months, been kind of talking back and forth. So I reached out to Mike, wanting kind of to get his perspective on some things, because for my own business now, the majority of it is online. And so obviously I've trained in person and still have a few clients, but there are people who will never hire an online coach, and there are people who strictly don't want to work in person. They want to work online. So there's kind of different populations of people. And sometimes it's easier to hire an online coach, as we were talking about earlier, because, you never have to meet them. Some people going to the gym can be, it can be kind of a nerve-wracking experience, especially if it's something you haven't done before. And so you can hire pretty much anybody you want online now. You can hire a financial advisor, you can hire all these people, and that goes with nutrition and fitness coaching too. And so today, Mike and I are going to be kind of talking about a little bit about kind of what are some things like when you first come into the gym, for somebody who wants an in-person trainer, or somebody who maybe wants to hire an online coach down the road, but right now they have no experience with exercise. And so when they come to meet you, Mike, I know you have, obviously, like you just mentioned there, you've worked with lots of different populations, right? And so you can definitely speak to this. But when a client comes to you and they have, obviously they're coming to the gym, whether they say it or not, they're probably a little nervous, right? What are some things you try and do to try and acclimate them to the gym to make them feel comfortable?
So one of the benefits of our space, the gym I work at, Body Mass Gym, it's a small gym. It's a boutique style gym. So there is a lot more like small kind of personal environment compared to, say, maybe compare me to the average person working out of a big box gym that can be really like intimidating, right? So there's tons of people all over the place. There's tons of really big dudes, tons of big women that can lift a ton of weight, right? So one of the things I like to do is just start with the basics, get to know the person a little bit. Probably that aspect is quite similar with, say, the online trainer, right? Like, yeah. It's all about the relationship there. If you can't build that relationship, what's the likelihood we're going to be able to actually move you forward, right? You're not going to want to come and talk to me, and you're not going to want to come and train with me, right? Exactly. So I would be curious to also hear your flip side? You said you did work with some people in person a while back.
Yeah, yeah. So when I started training in 2015, 2016. So did complete. I didn't start transitioning to online until about 2018. Really didn't start taking off the ground until 2020. So I mean, still relatively pretty new. So the majority of my training experience has been in person. I think you nailed it there. It's like you got to enjoy the person you work with, right? It goes both ways. Like I've had a few clients now who I've worked with for 3+ years, and I had other clients who they just kind of stuck around for a few months, right? There's
Yeah.
some who like there's some clients who I worked with like 7 years ago. We still talk, that like that's awesome because you're building that relationship. But it's really just like anything. You're going to the doctor. You want to go to a doctor you're comfortable with, right? You go to a dentist. You're going to go to a dentist you like. Same thing goes with a trainer. And I always tell people, when I'm signing up a new client or I'm starting to work with somebody, is like, I'm not for everybody, like, and that's okay, like that's okay, like I want to be able to mesh, like if I don't feel like it's a good fit, if I don't feel like I'm going to be the one to help you get to where you want to go, like I know tons of people, right? I can refer you out to somebody. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think building that relationship, I think um when a client first comes to the gym, like the number one thing to do is like it doesn't really matter how much about exercise if they don't like being there with you, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, like I often will shoot people. I think I actually stole this from trying to remember his name from the guy from Raise the Bar, and I'm sure it's probably a little bit Jonathan Goodman too. Whereas, like, yeah, you start that off before you even meet them. I shoot them emails asking them about themselves. Like,
Right.
have you trained with somebody before? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? Are there exercises that you like and want to include? Are
Yeah.
there ones you don't want to include? Um, what was your last experience like in the gym, or what's your past history like? Do you have a good background of movement? Did you play sports earlier in life? Like,
Hmm.
that tells us a lot of things to then kind of get you going on where is your starting point. Because again, like, there's many people on a spectrum, right? So your person that's done sports their whole life, they're really good, they know how their body moves, is going to be much different than that person that, man, they've never done sports, they've never even like gone to the gym. Like,
Yeah.
huge difference there. So
Yeah. Do you have a specific client in mind that you enjoy working the most with?
yeah, I mean, I actually have a couple, and again, I think it already goes back to what we already touched on as our first point there of like the relationship. It's like it just naturally, almost like when we met each other, right? So our first conversation was just fluid. It was an easy conversation. It didn't feel labored. That's the kind of people I like
Yeah.
to train the most because, yeah, it's almost like it almost feels like it's somebody you already are friends with in a sense, where it's somebody you can conversate with. It's somebody you feel like you have some common ground with, whether it be interests or you think in the same lines for like what you think is funny or humorous or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think those are important things and things that I've noticed, at least with the people I've jived with and messed with the best as I've started to work with different people. I don't have like a special population I work with yet.
Yeah.
It's kind of a mix of everyone. So I've worked with men, I've worked with women, um, I've worked with military people, I've worked with spouses of military people. That again,
Nice.
even that accolade is much different. So not accolade, that population I should say
Yeah.
is different because like a lot of the times when you have a military person, they're somebody that they might be working like 12 to 16-hour days,
Yeah.
barely even see their spouse that much. And then they get shipped overseas and they're gone for 6 months at a time. And their spouse is then just kind of left to their own devices and has
Yeah.
totally different life there, right? So lots of different aspects that can play and lots of variables that can play into the overall idea of what makes a good kind of coach and client relationship, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. I know we briefly have talked about this before, but like I live in a military town. And so like people come and go all the time. I have one of my clients right now I've worked for the past few years. Now they're in the reserves now, but they were active when I started, and then I've
Hmm.
trained people for the military. And so like, but with all those people, like typically a client who's asking for training or reaching out for coaching or something is probably coachable, right? And so
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like we there's not a lot of people who just aren't willing to listen. Like that's a big step for a lot of people to admit, like, I don't know everything, I need help. And so obviously if there you do have clients, and I'm sure you've had a client or probably will in the future, that you guys just don't mesh well, not because like what you're saying is wrong or what they're doing is wrong or something, but they're not necessarily receptive, right? And so that's always one thing. That's always one thing I always ask clients before I start working with them is like, like are you coachable? Like, are you willing to learn? Because how I do something is probably different than like how you do it, right? I started working with a client about a month ago now, and they had had a trainer for 4 years. They'd had a trainer for 4 years, and then I'm not sure all the details as to why they decided to look for something else, but like I do stuff completely differently.
Mm.
But they've been super coachable, very open to feedback and things like that. And so it's been really great to work with. But there's also other situations too where you talked about like former athletes, right?
Mm.
They may come in with this mindset like, I know more than this guy. Right.
Mm.
This guy's only been in the industry for this long, but I've been weightlifting since I was 15 years. You know what I mean? And so,
Mm.
um, I found, like I enjoy working with beginners, people who have limited experience. It's just fun for me. I like the teaching aspect of it, right? I,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like I like the and like it doesn't get old to me. Like I
yeah.
teach the same concepts over and over and over again, and it doesn't get old to me. But when you have clients who like say you had a client come in and they're like, hey, I really want to do, like, I saw this workout, it's this really high intensity workout, I feel really sweaty when I'm done, my body's sore, I feel like I got a great workout in.
Hmm.
How do you kind of work with them, how do you coach with them to kind of let them know, like, although these workouts are great, like, let's sorry, I left out a part there. Let's say their goal is muscle building, okay?
Hmm.
So what does that kind of conversation look like with them? How do you kind of like help them understand, like, although this workout is great, it might not be best for your intended purpose?
Yeah, so obviously you've got to get a little bit into the science and how things work with the body there. So there's obviously your more aerobic aspects that are like your cardio and higher intensity, higher heart rate things, and then you've got your more strength-based stuff that is more resistance-based. So
Yeah.
using weights or calisthenics, barbells, dumbbells, kettlebells, resistance bands. They're just different things. So I like to go from it. Again, my last role was I was a health educator, is what they called me, even though I kind of touched on all of those
Yeah, yeah.
aspects that we kind of
It's all
worked
health.
within.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's all health.
Yeah, yeah.
But the education aspect is something I really enjoy.
Mhm.
I really have an easy time holding my attention when I'm learning something new. It just always piques my interest. And so the mechanisms behind why something does this or that or the other thing is a big part of what I try to teach people. So
Mhm.
again, I know when we initially started and uh, touched base for doing this, I had mentioned like muscular endurance as
Yeah.
one potential idea, or that other like fancy term, neurological adaptation. So those are two
Right.
things that more push towards the strength training realm, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
muscular endurance is a fancy exercise term that just really means building your ability to kind of do strength training
Right.
for a longer period of time, right? So more work capacity.
Mhm.
You could probably also relate that to say cardio in the respective, you're not using weights, but you're doing an activity for longer, right? So
Mhm.
going for longer runs or able to run more consistently for more minutes. So there's that bridge. They do different things though based on what what you're focusing on. resistance training, obviously then is more kind of in line with building muscle mass, right? Versus your cardio, it's not to say you can't build some, it's just not the most effective way to then say build muscle mass, right?
Yeah.
So again, to reference and kind of reiterate all the smart things I know from people that I listen to and follow, a big component between muscle building and moving that muscle mass up. Obviously, there's nutrition components, but it's the resistance against your muscles, so the tension against your muscles, and uh, doing those exercises repetitively over time and continuing to have that stimulus on the muscle, right? So that would be kind of the way I would try to break it down. Just kind of explaining the difference there of like, if we're trying to build muscle mass, we need to sit in this kind of realm. If we're trying to build the cardio aspect there, that's in this other realm. And it's a spectrum. Obviously, we've got cardio to strength, and they're competing interests in some sense, not always, but
Yeah.
obviously if you're only doing cardio, or 90% of your workouts are cardio, you're not going to expect to build a ton of muscle mass. If you're only doing strength training and lifting really, really heavy, like a power lifter or a strongman, it's unlikely that you're going to get that cardio improvement drastically up. I give the spectrum of I always like that. That's the one I used, especially in my old job, when people would ask that question specifically, is like, look at your best strength athletes. So your power lifters and your, say, strongman competitors. There's a very specific way they look, right? Now, go look at that ultra marathon runner on the other side. Drastic difference there, right? Have you ever seen a top competitor for strongman running an ultra marathon? No. So you've got a wide spectrum in between that, but that kind of gives a good visual behind like why one would train one thing and the other would train another thing.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
are your
No.
thoughts on that? Do you have any
Yeah.
input
No.
other than that?
I think you nailed it there. I
Yeah.
think that was a great explanation there. I like the example there. The power lift, the ultra marathon runner. I
Uh-huh.
always thought like when I was training, I was like, I got really big into weightlifting. I think probably around college and stuff. So I was just trying to get big and strong as I can. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
like, yeah, like you said though, like typically the guys who are, I've got some friends who are really big into powerlifting. They're not really great at cardio, right? They
Hmm.
go run a block, they're winded, right? And then you get the people who can run for hours on end, but they haven't touched a weight since ever, right? And so there's a happy medium there, and I always kind of like look at it like for like the average person, I think of it more of like training them like if you're comparing it to an athlete here, um, comparing it more to like a basketball player, right? A basketball player's got to be strong. They've got to have endurance. They've got to have speed. They've got to have mobility. They've got to be agile. They got to be flexible. All these things and stuff. And so, like, I think like there's room for all of that, right? Like, and it is hard. It is hard because um, if you're not meeting with a client 7 days a week, 6 days, if you're only meeting them with them 1 or 2, possibly 3 days,
Hmm.
how do you fit all this in, right? And so I think that's exactly like what you were saying there. It's important for trainers, it's important for coaches to educate them, right? And like I always tell clients, like the very first time I meet them, I was like, we're not going to work together forever, like
Hmm.
so like my goal is to teach you as much as possible in a short amount of time that you can implement right away, right? I'd love to
Hmm.
work with you forever, but I've been doing this long enough to realize there's a point, there's a point where, they're going to graduate, they're going to move away, they're going to do something where they're no
Yeah.
longer going to be there. I had a client, he, this would have been 2016, 2017, never touched a weight in his life. And we started working out. He loved it. We met 2 or 3 times a week. And then one day he came to me and he said, I think I'm ready to do it on my own. And I was like really sad. I was like, this is, I love this guy. We still hung out. We still went and grabbed lunch and stuff like that. He lives local, so I got to see him and stuff. But he's since moved away since then. But I was like, man, like that's really cool because like when he first started, like that was his goal. He wanted to learn
Hmm.
what to do so he could go do it on his own. And then I would run into him at the gym and stuff, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it's a cool relationship. I think I think you get to know clients really well. You get to depending on your client base. I know like you may have a pretty kind of a revolving door of client. Work considering the client base you work with and stuff. And so it could be kind of hard. But a lot of times clients share with you things like they don't tell anybody else, right? Like it's a very intimate setting and stuff. And so although like kind of circling back to what we talked about at the beginning, a lot of it, has to do with like they want to come in, they want to get in shape and stuff, but they're going to stay because of that relationship you build,
Yeah.
right? It's like most of them, like if you asked them all these things that you taught them, yeah, they may know some of it, you know what I mean? It's like, but they don't really
Yeah.
care if they know it because they got you, right? They can
Yeah.
just ask you questions and stuff. And so, with that being said, like there's an abundance of resources online, right? You can go online, you can find anything. Um, and I know for me, my clients ask me, I was like, well, I saw this the other day and I thought about trying this or the. How do you educate it? Because it is hard, like we have all these things. Well, like obviously we've always had Google, you can find anything, but now we have like Chat GPT and all these things where it's like you ask a question, it'll create a whole thing for you and stuff. So how do you, what do you do to kind of, um, clear out the nonsense, I guess, and just focus on what's just kind of actually working and what's kind of worth like not even giving a try to.
Yeah. The obviously again, that's the age we've come into, right? Is information overload. So there's too much
Right.
information now, and with that comes confusion. So
Hmm.
as you said, I think with one of your uh, prior podcast guests, it's like everyone on the internet that has a profile can pretty much have their own opinion out there, and
Right.
who's to say that theirs is a good or a bad opinion, right? So that's where we come in and we can help people sort through that stuff. So my favorite way to do that, and I'm sure you see it on my social media all the time, and I'll eventually get more of my own specific content out there, is I like pointing people in the direction of other smart people too, like people that I look up to, people I know give out good
Yeah.
information. I still have plenty of good information I can provide myself. And again, even if I point people to other people, who's going to be the person people trust the most? The one that you work with in person or
Right.
face to face or online and have a direct relationship with, right? So
Yeah.
they're going to trust whoever they know the best. So generally, they're going to come to you, and you can kind of sort through it based on what you know. Again, not to say that we know everything, but again,
Yeah.
we should be able to kind of cater to knowing what we know really well and what we might need to pass somebody along to with somebody that has more in-depth knowledge than we do.
Yeah.
But again, I usually often use established resources like I love Precision Nutrition. They're a great resource that puts out really
Yeah.
great information. There's plenty of other individual organizations like ACSM, which is the American College of Sports Medicine.
Hmm.
We've got again the certification company that I use, National Strength and Conditioning Association. I'm trying to think who else. I'm sure there's plenty of other great resources out there
Yeah.
too. But again, I try to go for ones that are gonna put information clearly in more digestible manners for people that might struggle with it. And again, I focus on this kind of the small things. So again, the more broad you get with things, the more there's lack of nuance,
Yeah.
and there's never a black or white answer when it comes to nutrition or fitness or health. And that's an important thing to take away, if nothing else. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think, um, like our clients look to us like we have all the answers, right?
mhm.
But we know very well we don't, and so
Yeah, yeah,
like I,
yeah.
I I think like
Never know it
just
all.
like yeah, like and I think like you said there, like great coaches are going to refer out. right? We only have so much knowledge, and like I do my best to always, like, when a client doesn't know, like when they ask me something I don't know, and I'll tell them instead of making something up, and I'm sure I've done that before, just to kind of, save face and not look like, I don't know what I'm doing. But
Hmm.
as I've gotten older, as like I think it's important for your clients to know, like, you don't know everything. You know what I mean? Like, I'm learning this stuff too, and because, like, it can be confusing. Like, even for coaches, even for people who are in the industry, like, I still wonder sometimes, like, am I doing the best workout for me? You know what I mean? And it's like, is there anything to, specific foods for body? You know what I mean? I was like,
Uh-huh.
you always kind of want, I mean, obviously, like, um, talk yourself down, talk clients down from some of these things and stuff. But it's like, you're wondering, you know what I mean? Because, like, think
Yeah,
about, like, even just like 30 years ago, all this stuff we know now. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's just
It
like,
just goes in
it's like,
cycles too.
exactly, and it's like, and it's a completely different world, and we have all this data, we have all these tests and stuff, and I was like, it would be really cool. It would be cool to do a test where it's like, eat these foods, these are best for you. You know what I mean? It's like, that would be awesome if you could do something like that. But it's like, a lot of times we make it super complicated, right?
Yeah.
Like, we,
The
we
the
make
less
it.
complicated we can make it, the better. Because again, we as coaches know that the simple things work, and they're not sexy, but
Yeah,
those are the things you really need to focus on first. And then
exactly.
if those are not lining up to getting you where you need to go, then you can move on
Yeah.
from there. Like, again, I know people that have really bad digestive stomach issues. Like, they might be an exception to the rule, right? So
Mhm.
they might have to avoid some carbohydrates that really, like, tend to affect their gut in different ways than maybe you and me, because we have a normal, like, working intestinal tract, right?
Yeah.
So there's always exceptions to the rule, and there's always nuance. It's not black and white. So it sadly often will come down to a little bit of trial and error. And I think knowing that can be a freeing thing to kind of working your path forward. And it's, again, yeah, it might be the next person that comes along, like, they just get lucky and the first thing they try works really well for them,
Yeah.
and then they shout it from the rooftop, right?
Exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
this is the
They
one.
become
This is the
evangelist.
one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily mean the next person could do the exact same thing and have the exact same result. Like,
Right.
that's just not how it works. But
Right.
obviously, the bigger topics, such as, like, again, focusing on what has more calories, what has less calories when it comes to nutrition, what has more nutrients, what has less nutrients when it comes to nutrition, what has more protein for the calories in nutrition,
Mhm.
um, and then going over to the exercise component, right? So what gets you moving on a regular basis,
Right.
and you don't mind doing it as much, whether it be walking, running, cycling, swimming, whatever. For strength training, what exercises you actually like to do? Maybe it's the bigger ones, like barbell movements. Maybe it's you feel a lot better when you do your dumbbell movements or kettlebell movements. That's the way I always encourage people to think about it, because again, it all comes back to what we already touched on, which was, what do you enjoy doing more than the other things? If you
Yeah.
can find those and do them consistently, that's the end all be all magic pill that everyone looks for,
Yeah.
rather than those shortcuts.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. One thing that always has, um, kind of like we were talking about there with, like, we don't know all the answers, right? But
Hmm.
our clients come to us. Our clients come to us asking us for the answers, and they expect to get something, right?
Hmm.
I remember when I was in college, I had an advisor, we were talking about, this is like my first year at the university or something, and I'm talking about classes for next semester or something like this, and um, trying to figure out my schedule. And his response to me was, he's like, "Well, it's really up to you. This is your life. It's your call." And I was like, well, that is probably the least helpful. like, why am I in this meeting? You know what I mean? He was like, and like, I understand what he was saying, and I appreciate that he said that, because he wasn't like, you need to do this, you need to do that. But I was looking for guidance, right?
Hmm.
And I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Aaron Horschig, Squat University.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, so a lot of I've actually gotten to meet him twice, which has been pretty cool. But he is the like world's most likable guy. But uh, I know like if you watch his content, a lot of times his answer is it depends. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And it's like I think that's really. Um, I think it's really important to have that answer, right? Because there's no one size fits all, right? For some people, they're going to get better squat depth if their feet are turned out a little bit, right? Because they don't have that hip mobility, you know what I mean? And so they don't have that ankle mobility or something's going on there upstream, downstream that's causing them not to do it. For other people, they may have to turn their foot in a little bit, right? And so it's like to tell everybody you need to do this to do a squat. And so that's where that kind of comes from. But I know
Mhm.
for me personally, like if I ask somebody a question and they tell me like it depends, or like well, in certain cases, you know what I mean, talking in generalities, it can be really frustrating. Like I've had
Yeah.
like business coaches I've worked with, and like I'm looking for guidance. I'm looking for something I can implement, something I can do, even if it's not the best thing right away. Like for me personally, I like to just put things in to action. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's nice to just be told this is what you should do. And so, with all that being said, when a client comes to you and they ask you a question about nutrition, or it could be weightlifting or something like that. Obviously, like we just talked about, there's no one size fits all. But how do you balance between helping them understand that in certain cases, this is the correct way, but also giving them something they can actually do, right?
Yeah. I always try to touch on the most important aspects is like, again, if we're talking diet, would be again looking at calories, looking at protein intake, looking at nutrient density. So that
Mm-hmm.
being a fancy way of saying like how many nutrients are you getting for the amount of calories, um, and then going from there. Like I like to ask like questions, like probing questions to be like, okay, so what do you like to eat? Why? What are things that you normally include in your dietary intakes or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Because again, that's going to shape a big part of are they going to be able to be successful with keeping this consistent moving forward or not? Because again, the thing that bothers me the most is when say somebody is like, okay, I just need a diet plan, just tell me
Yeah.
what to eat, and we'll go from there. But then you're dependent on said diet plan, right? Like, what if you don't like half of those things?
Yeah.
What are you going to do then? Like, you pretty much are already kind of screwed at that point because there's nothing tied to your own personal preferences related there.
Mm-hmm.
I say the same thing when it comes to like the exercise aspect. So to give a specific example, I remember it was multiple times again when I was working with military clients. There'd be people that were pretty big guys that were like, all right, I've gained like 50, 60 pounds over the last year and a half because I've been immobile. I got injured. My doctor told me not to do anything while this injury heals and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And they were kind of going to that mindset of, all right, so let's just go and start running again. It's like, I wouldn't recommend that because like you're 60 pounds heavier than you were when you were doing that previously. So let's think outside the box there. And again, probably it's going to be miserable to try to run with an added 60 pounds on your body.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I always encourage people to think again, like they might not even like running in the first place. What are some other options that would accomplish the same goal? So
Mm-hmm.
again, as I kind of listed off, I like encouraging people to think for some of those uh, lower impact exercises. So you've got like the elliptical, you've got swimming, you've got stepping, you've got rowing, you've got cycling. So those would all accomplish the same exact thing. Obviously, maybe not quite as high of an intensity activity as running, but again, it's still like a bridge to get you back to where you're trying to go. And I think is kind of a smarter way of looking at it. So that is kind of the way I try to address things when it comes to that. Just because, again, I think having options becomes, while obviously it makes it more decision fatigue in a sense for some people. But again,
Yeah.
there's different people. Some people like having those choices, some people don't. Again, it
Yeah.
still comes back to that initial idea of, say, what are the things you actually don't mind doing? I think
Mm.
I think it was Jordan Syatt that I'm referencing here that was like, when he would talk to clients, he would literally ask you, like, all right, what is the thing you hate doing the least?
Yeah.
So it's like, again, even if you hate all forms of exercise, it's like, okay, what is the one you can actually get yourself to do at least somewhat consistently,
Right.
so that you're not like feeling 100% miserable the entire time you're doing it, like, or even pair it with something else. So um, I forget what the actual term is, the psychological term, but it's like, oh, I do remember. It's called like distraction bundling, where, say, you got to get your cardio in, you don't want to do it, but man, I really like listening to this podcast about so and so and whatnot. So
Yeah.
you pair those things together, and it makes it a little less miserable, makes it more doable, because
Yeah.
you actually get a little bit of something you want to do while you're doing something you might not want to. I do that with laundry myself. So I
Yeah.
watch Netflix while I fold my laundry, because otherwise
There you go.
it's impossible to get
Yeah.
myself to do
Take 3 weeks. Yeah.
right. Yeah, I'll fold like two socks at a time and be like, all right, that's
Yeah.
enough for today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you find yourself doing anything like that too? I feel like that's a really good strategy that I try to use constantly.
Yeah. So I've been doing that a lot of times with like my cardio. Like I've always so when I first started, probably like middle school, I really got into plyometrics.
Okay.
And so I was doing plyometrics a ton. Like I was always like one of the smallest guys. I'm not a very big guy now, and I was always obviously one of the smallest on my team and stuff. But I was like, like what can I do to improve my jumping ability, right? I was like, kind of give me an edge, right? And so I started doing plyometrics, and through doing like I did probably way more volume than you should ever do, but
Okay.
but my cardio was fantastic. I had never been somebody who was great at like running long distance. I was pretty good at sprinting when I was younger, but doing all these plyometrics, I became like really good at
Yeah, I bet.
sprinting and stuff. But it helped. It helped my cardio. Like how many seventh grade kids are doing plyometrics at home on their own, right? You know what I
Hopefully
mean?
not many.
Probably not many, right? I found a just some program online and I ordered it. I had to have my parents help me. I used my money to buy it and stuff, and so like just a byproduct of that, my like conditioning was like through the roof. It was like the best shape I'd ever been in and stuff. And so it was just like my recovery was so good too and stuff. But like back to my natural state, I guess. Like for my wife, like she could just go. Like she, between like all the kids, she hasn't really like run much, right?
Hmm.
But she could literally go right now. Like she went a few weeks, first time she had ran again since our daughter was born, and she went like 3 miles. Just like went and ran like 3 miles, and it was just like, I was like, I'm exhausted. I'm like, I'm exhausted if I go run 3 miles. So I'm like actually training for and it's like,
Right.
and so it's like some people are just like kind of have like, you obviously have certain abilities and stuff, and so for me that's an area like I would like to improve, right? I would like to improve my cardio, and so I got a treadmill out in the garage, and I put the tablet up there, and I watch a Netflix show or Hulu, whatever it is, and it's like 22 minutes or something, and that's about as long as my cardio workout is and stuff. And I do my
Hmm.
run on there. I'll do intervals and stuff like this, and so like for me, it's like sometimes it's like not super enjoyable, but I know like I'm watching a show, I'm distracted, right? My treadmill literally faces the door, so if I'm listening to music while I'm on the treadmill, I'm just literally staring at the door the entire time. So it's like it gives me something to focus on, takes my mind off it, and I find like I actually look forward to it.
Yeah.
And so I think, yeah, I think that's a great point you brought up, and I think that's really good too about like new client. I have clients who that I meet with in person that the only time they work out is when they're with me, right? And it's like, because like kind of like what you said there, like they're not really wanting to do it. They're not, but they found what works for them, right? They found that if I'm there with Coach Mike, I'm gonna get my workout in. They found if I listen to this podcast or this audiobook while I'm going for a jog outside, I'm much more likely to do it and stuff. And so, yeah, I think it's James Clear calls it habit stacking,
Hmm.
or
It might
and
have been
then
from him, that term, temptation
yeah,
bundling. I'm pretty sure
yeah,
that's correct.
yeah. No, it might. And
Not
then
the
there's also
creator.
I don't know if you're familiar with BJ Fogg.
I've heard of
B,
him. I'm not as familiar with him as James Clear, though.
okay, yeah, he's got a book called Tiny Habits, which I actually think is fantastic.
Hmm.
It's a great book. I think I haven't finished it yet, to be honest, but I think I like it better than Atomic Habits. But
Oh yeah.
and I will edit this comment out of the show if I once I finish it, and if I'm wrong. But no, it's a it's a pretty good book too. They're both pretty good resources. But
Yeah, and they
I
both
think
get at like what is really important, right? Which is like
right,
we are just a culmination of the habits that we get into. So like
yeah,
that's literally what we do for our job is helping people create better and new habits.
yeah,
Like that is where the magic happens because again,
mm,
a lot of people come from a childhood where maybe their parents didn't set the best example for them. That's a
yeah,
good point for you to hit on after here, but you learn a lot of those habits from your parents. So if you had bad examples growing up, you probably have a lot of bad habits that you picked up throughout your childhood. It's not to
yeah,
say people have bad parents or anything like that. It's just sometimes there's some some poor habits we pick up through being in contact with them quite frequently. So again, with you focusing on fathers and fatherhood for a lot of your clients, like that's a point I always like to hit on is like who is the main person that is the either good or bad example. It's your parents. They create so
yeah,
many things that you don't even realize in your subconscious. They either help or
yeah.
hurt you over time.
Yeah, yeah, and no, I think so one thing they always talk about, like you're the average of the five people you spend the most time with, but when you're thinking about like the five people you spend time with, a lot of people leave out their parents,
Hmm.
right? Um, and like that's two people right there. That's 40% of those
Yeah.
five people, right? And it's like, and so like that's huge. And I live a couple hours away from my parents, and we see them fairly regularly. But I've noticed myself like a lot of like if we go into town and stay the weekend with my parents, I kind of fall into some of these habits like snack. Like I don't snack a ton at home. Like that's
Hmm.
not something I do. It like I like obviously I snack. I love snacking and stuff, but like that my food choices change
Yeah.
when I'm at my parents' house. Like it's like I literally like fall into these habits. I'll find myself like late at night just like opening the fridge and stuff at their house, and like the cat, and it's like it's so strange because like I don't like I'm not even hungry, but like
Uh-huh.
that's what I did when I was a kid. You know what I mean? I was like, and it's just like really strange. Like you fall into these, you think like habits like I know there's tons of science on it, but I'm not sure habits ever fully go away. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
they do, but like it's so hard. It's so hard, and so that I think we can use that to our advantage, though, right? We
Yeah.
can like because we can create these habits that we're that are almost going to replace them, or just that get put you know higher priority in front of them, right? And so like for one of them, for me, I know that like obviously like exercise is important, sleep is important, but getting up at the same time every day has been something that has been, and I've it took a long time to get there, but 7 days a week I get up at the same time. And to me, probably going back to James Clear here, but a keystone habit. This is one of the ones that kind of sets everything up for me too, right? Because I know like if I can get what I need done in the morning. It's kind of like I call them my bookends. Like I got my morning, I'm still working on that nighttime routine. Like my night, none of my nights look the same,
Hmm.
but
But
my
you have
mornings
kids,
always,
so.
yeah, yeah. But I can't even blame them. I can't blame them. It's
No,
just
okay.
sometimes, I try and like read a book and stuff. But to be honest, like for me, sometimes reading a book makes me like more like alert at night than like watching a
Yeah,
show. Sometimes just watching a
yeah,
show, I just like zone out and I'm ready for bed.
yeah.
So
Again,
it's like
that's why you gotta personalize. You can't say,
right,
"Oh, this is my routine. You do my routine." You gotta find what works for you. Like
exactly.
for me, it's I am making my protein shake for the next morning. I
Mm,
am setting up the coffee machine, and that's
yeah,
the most consistent part. I
yeah,
usually will. I like having a. Obviously, it doesn't work for everyone, but I have a glass of milk right before I go to bed too, just as some last hit of protein there.
there you
So
go.
that's generally my routine. I try to hit the bed mostly within the same hour each night.
Yeah,
My bedtime routine seems to be a little better than my morning routine, just because I have varied times that I work at in the morning since I'm in
right.
person. Um, but yeah, if I was doing online, I think I would probably have a little better morning routine. I used to
Yeah,
have a really good one when I was working with the military because I had to be there at 7 a.m. every day, so
yeah, yeah.
I had to drive an hour. So it does make a difference.
Yeah, and just like we said there, like my morning routine is pretty set in stone right now. But my evening routine, it's been very hard to create a new one, right? And you got to be
Hmm.
really intentional about it.
Hmm.
There's all these research or how long it takes to make a habit, form a habit, all these things and stuff. But a lot of it is just, it's probably going to take longer,
Right.
longer than you would like. It's going to take longer than
Absolutely.
3 weeks, probably. It's going to take longer than a couple months. I was like, if you've been doing something your whole life, it's going to make it much harder. It's going to, if you've never worked out before and you're wanting to go to the gym, it's probably going to take longer than a month to get into a routine, right?
Yeah.
But
I'm gonna put on my coaching hat for a second here, and I'm
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
ask you. So, what
Okay.
does, if you were to think about it, obviously, again, it's off the top of your head. It doesn't have to be like what would actually end up being the perfect routine. What would you say
Yeah.
off the top of your head would be your perfect nighttime routine if you could choose right now?
Yeah, yeah. So I've played around with this a lot. I played around with it. I'm up at 5:30 every day. 5:30 is
Hmm.
when I go to.
That's to
Obviously
beat the
eight
kids
hours.
out of the bed, I would assume, right?
Say that again.
That's to beat the kids out of the bed, I would assume, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So 5:30 every day. My kids are up pretty early.
Yeah.
Usually get them up about between 6:45 and 7, and so that gives me an hour each morning by
Hmm.
myself. And so that I found that works really well for me. So up at 5:30. So ideally, like 8 hours of sleep. I've kind of come to the conclusion, like right now, I'm probably not going to get 8 hours. So I shoot for 7. I shoot for 7, and so ideally,
You're
what that
beating
would
most
mean
people
is
there.
yeah. But I get about, I don't know, between 6, 6.5 most nights, 6:45 if I'm. I got 7 one time a couple weeks ago. Felt fantastic. So I was like, that's my goal. My goal is to be in bed by 10.
But you
Goal is to
don't
be
give
in
up
bed.
immediately when you're not getting that 7 right. It's not just let's just cut it all out. Don't even
Right,
try.
right.
Just
Yeah,
gotta
and so,
keep
yeah,
going.
so it's something I'm intentional with. I try to be in bed by 10. Usually it's closer to 10:30. Usually it's closer to 10:30. Um, and so like that gives me, that's where I kind of end up with a 6.5, 6:45. I'd like
Hmm.
to be in there by 10, so that way I'm asleep by 10:30. Can get that,
Hmm.
but I typically wake up a couple times. So it's like ideally if I could, once the kids are in bed, spending some time with my wife. Maybe we're watching a show or something, doing what we're doing, and then ideally would like to like read, do something like that before bed. But like I said, reading sometimes just like sparks my mind. Like I just can't stop thinking about it, right? And so I
Yeah,
found
same,
like
same.
yeah, yeah, and so I found like um, if I if I'm watching like Friends or something, something I've seen 100 times, right? I don't think about it.
Exactly.
I
Yeah,
don't go to bed. Like once I go to bed, I'm not thinking like, man, Joey and Rachel, like all these. It's
exactly.
like
You already
I
know it's something. The way I think of it is it's like it's something you don't care if you fall
yeah
asleep to, or it's not like you're watching a new movie that you've wanted to watch for six
yeah
months again. And we can both probably admit this is obviously against the grain. You're not supposed to have a TV in your bedroom and
yeah
whatnot, right? So, or obviously, again, if you're watching it out in the living room. But again, different things work for different people. So
right
it's not to generalize here, but it's not to say that this would be the perfect way for everyone else too. But
yeah
it works for me too. Mine is Bob's Burgers. I've seen that 1,000 times. And it's one of those things. It's almost like my brain is cued to fall asleep because Bob's Burgers is on. So
right right yeah
I'm
and
not actually
no
watching the TV either. I'm
yeah.
listening.
You're just
Like
kind of
if I
hanging
could
out.
turn
Yeah
the actual screen off, I would
yeah.
and just listen to the sound. Maybe there's a way to do that that I don't know of.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but
No,
yeah, but like you said that. So I don't have a TV, and I'm glad you brought that up. So I don't have a TV in my room, and I leave my phone outside the room.
that's smart.
And so I used to have a real problem with that. Like I'd get in bed, and then I'd start looking at Instagram or
Start
reply
scrolling.
to a message or start scrolling, and then I'm just like I could be there for like an hour. You know what I mean? And it's like,
Yeah.
but I always leave it out in the living room now for two reasons. One, because that way I'm never tempted. And I don't think I've brought my phone in the bedroom in, I don't know, very long time, which that I'm very proud of myself for that because that used to be a real issue. Number
Yeah.
two is I have my alarm on my watch. All our rooms in the house are pretty close. So if I set like an old school alarm, which I used to try and set it across the room, so I'm never hitting
Hmm.
snooze getting up. But now
Yeah.
since all the kids' rooms are closed, I don't want to wake everybody up. So I set it on my watch, but then I set my backup alarm on my phone, and so my alarm goes off at 5:30. Alarm on my phone goes off at 5:33. So I have 3 minutes to get up. So if I hit snooze on my watch, then I know I'm waking somebody else off because it's got a song playing on it, and so that's why I leave it out there too, which has been very helpful. So
Nice. You ever heard of that? There's the one alarm clock that it's got like wheels and it runs away from you.
runs away. Yeah, I've seen that. I used to use one. I used to use one which is pretty cool. I think it's an app. I can't remember the name of it, but you took like a picture of something. So say you took a picture
Oh,
of like your fridge or something. In order to turn the alarm off, you had to take the phone to the fridge and take a picture of it, and I had to verify it. So I was like, I used that one for a little. That one didn't last too long for me, but I
no.
think the fear of waking all the kids up early has
Right.
has worked well for me. So
But still, it shows the whole idea of like it's not a generalizable thing here. It's a trial and error process, right? So you're
right,
trying out different things, seeing if it works well for you. If it works well, you
yeah,
keep it. If you don't
exactly.
feel like it works well, then
Yep,
just get rid of it.
yep,
Obviously, give it a fair chance first. You got to give it
yeah,
actually
yeah,
like
yeah,
more than one
yep,
try, probably. But
right.
so maybe try it for a week or two at least to see. No, this works well, or this doesn't work well, and then
Yeah,
that's how you kind of trial and error your way through these things and find your process that works for you.
yep, yep. Well, Mike, I appreciate you coming on. I know we got to run here soon. Um, before we go though, where can everybody find you? I know you're kind of new to um, the social media game there, but I want to make sure everybody kind of gets a chance. Everybody kind of gets a chance to follow you on social media. So if you want to kind of tell us where we can find you best online, or if somebody is locally and they can meet up with you, I'll also put all that information in the show notes as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I said, so obviously you'd have to be in the DC area if you wanted to train with me locally. I train through the Body Mass Arlington location, Body Mass Gym, as well as the DC location, which is kind of more on the top portion of DC. DC is actually pretty small. It's only like I think like 10 miles across. So
Hmm.
um, even just Northern Virginia, Arlington area is probably just as big as the entirety of DC. So, but their website is just I think it's just bodymassgym.com. Let me double check here. I've got it right in my pull up window here. So yeah, so bodymassgym.com. you'll actually, I forgot, we just took new photos, so you'll see me we're all over the webpage too. So
Nice,
I
nice.
was not involved with like all of our new pictures, and we were staging some photos of training people. So inquiries there if you needed to find me there. If you want to interact with me on social media, I don't again put out a whole lot of my own content right now, but I always try to cater a couple things, some good entertainment and some good information from other people until I have some of my own stuff. So um, certainly, I always am watching your social media too. So if you're interacting with Anthony, I will probably see your comments. So I'll try to like some of you guys' comments if you are interacting with him. So my social
Awesome.
media though is Coach_Crossett, like my last name, CROSSETT. So two S's, two T's.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on today. I know you got a pretty busy schedule, and you're running back to another seminar after this,
Yeah,
and so
gotta go play with some
appreciate you coming
kettlebells.
on. Kettlebells, awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. That's a
Uh,
great. Yeah, I think kettlebells are something too. We could do like a whole podcast on that kind of versatility
Yeah,
there.
honestly, I'm pretty new. Again, to show you that we don't know everything, I am very new to kettlebells. I'm learning
Yeah,
today. I'm trying something new. I know a couple
awesome.
quick little easy things to use kettlebells with, but
Yeah.
I'm learning today. I'm the newbie today.
All
So
right, all
but I
right.
appreciate you having me on, man. It's always fun to talk with you, and I look forward to interacting with you, especially on Instagram in the near future here.
Awesome, man. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
Of course. Have a good rest of your day.
That concludes this episode of the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. Thank you for those of you who took time out of your busy schedules to listen. If you have any questions or comments or an idea for a topic for a future episode, please feel free to reach out, and I'd love to hear from you.